Welcome to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Boyson, the host of Inside Personal Growth. Everybody out there knows me, but many of you probably don't know our expert and author who wrote this book, Project Management for the Unofficial Project Managers, the updated and revised edition. Good morning to you, Kory. How are you?
Good morning. Nice to see you.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show. And I don't think there's a soul out there, Kory, who literally isn't affected in some way, especially since COVID, and all of us working on computers, about how we manage our time, but projects and things we have to do. And, you know, for the gig worker, this is there, and for every other worker. But I'm going to let my listeners know a little bit about your background so that they know who you are. Kory Kogon is Franklin Covey's Vice President of Content Development and Senior Leadership Consultant. She's the co-author of the #4 Wall Street Journal bestseller, The 5 Choices, The Path to Extraordinary Productivity. In addition to Project Management Essentials for the Unofficial Project Manager, our book today, and Presentation Advantage. Kory's been featured in Inc.com and in its Productivity Playbook online series on fastcompany.com's, Forbes.com, and Investor Business Daily. She has over 25 years of business experience from the frontline positions to serving as the executive team member for global franchise organization. This provides her unique perspective on the application of Franklin Covey's world-renowned content within organizations. Kory not only understands the strategy and principles necessary to build great leaders, systems, and winning cultures, but she also understands how Franklin Covey's blended learning offerings deliver practical solutions that enable the behavior changes required for transformational results in organizations. Well, that's quite an intro. So tell us, Kory, how did you end up being at Franklin Covey for as long as you had, 25 years, and really diving into a topic which, you know, when you think about it, yeah, we've all been doing project management since, I don't know, in some point since the industrial era, right? It's like, hey, we've got to get all this stuff done. How did you get into this?
Well, first of all, thanks again, Greg, for having me, and thanks for doing that intro. That was quite the intro. And I've actually been at Franklin Covey for 18 years. So I'm really dating myself because I have many years of business experience prior to that as you mentioned, EVP of Worldwide Operations for a global franchise organization. And so, you know, how I got to doing this was, you know, when you're a franchise organization, the corporate headquarters is really there to support, coach, and help, you know, businesses become profitable and meet their mission and vision out there. And so we were always making things. Everything was a project. And so even at my level, reporting to the CEO, we were always coming up with new marketing campaigns and training programs and all of that. So it was part of my DNA early on, and we were a Franklin Covey company. So we had a 7 Habits culture and a productivity culture. And so just all of that mixed together sort of helped me arrive at Franklin Covey, working on a lot of, you know, becoming a thought leader around leadership, productivity, with real world experience from where I had just been out in the field. And so
Covey recruited you away from the company that Covey had all of its content in.
Well, no, they didn't. We said there was a new CEO. We parted ways, and I knocked on Franklin Covey's door, and one thing led to another. Surprisingly, so it's a very interesting story. But ended up, you think you're going to do a couple of things and some consulting with them. And the next thing you know, I was full time with everything. And all of, like I said,
Well,
my experience, came to bear in what I was doing with Franklin Covey.
I mean, Stephen M.R. Covey, the son, and Stephen Covey were definitely just incredible leaders in helping businesses transform themselves. And Stephen Covey Sr. came up with so many great foundational ideas that are still being used worldwide today. So it's a franchise that isn't going away, that's for certain. So, your book outlines 3 foundational principles. You call it create value, lead people, manage processes. Can you explain how someone new to project management or anybody can start applying these principles effectively to better manage a project inside their organization? Because we have lots of middle line managers listening to this, and they're going to want to know.
Okay. Well, it is, one of the things that Franklin Covey is so well known for is that we start with a mindset. What does our mindset need to be? So a lot of people, when it comes to projects, their mindset is, okay, do I have a process? Do I have a Gantt chart? Do I have something? And then how do I tell people what to do? And that doesn't make people bad, but that's sort of the mindset that they know of. Our mindset around project management is we go, aha, wait a minute. It is about, project success equals making sure there's value in the project, making sure that we have a group of engaged people to do the work, and we have a process to pull it all through. So it's sort of that starting place for any project manager, actually, in this day and age. And it's interesting because only recently, as part of why the book was revised, the Project Management Institute, who certifies the official project managers out there, and we take our guidance from them, changed their standards, what they call PMBOK 17, where value and the agile project management methods really now are front and center, and value is a huge part of it because so many projects started out with good intentions and ended up being something completely different or didn't meet customer needs after the fact. And so what's the value? How am I checking in to make sure that we are providing value to the client as we're making the project? How do I inspire people? And then what process am I using to manage the pieces and tasks of the project to a good finish?
That's a great explanation of that. And, any project manager is trying to align people toward a common vision to get it accomplished, right? And carry them through some projects like, the sending the Hubble telescope was a 10-year project in billions of dollars, and it ran over extensively. I think the government said it was going to be $1 billion. It was $9 billion more, So you always wonder how these projects go awry, that much awry. So for many of my listeners, they're going to find themselves in project management roles without any formal training. And that's what this book is about. What are the most common challenges that they would face? And how does the book help address these challenges?
Oh, big point that you're making, Greg, is this difference between we're not the audience of myself, you, and others. We're not building the Hubble, space thing. Or a bridge or anything like that. We are knowledge workers paid to think, innovate, create, and execute. And so every day we are, like I said earlier, maybe we're making a marketing campaign or a new process for payroll or a training program or something that has a beginning and an end. And we are unofficial project managers. We haven't had the kind of training that the officials sort of had. To answer your question, what that means is us really talented people, you, your audience, very talented people, sort of intuitively pushing their way through projects. And you said this earlier, we've been doing projects for a long time, even at home. If you think about a project, making a dinner is a Thanksgiving dinner, let's say here in the US, is a project. A wedding is a project. So we've been doing these things. At work, it's become our work. And what has happened is that the failure list has gotten long and it's become the status quo. So not having clear objectives, lack of communication, having the wrong people in the wrong roles or not the right people in the right roles, scope creep, which is a little bit of Hubble, but not quite, lack of clear expectations, which might have been in Hubble as well. Those are sort of the top things that come up every time I ask the question of a group of people, whether in an organization or a live event, to brainstorm what are the challenges, and what I just mentioned are the top ones. And again, it's the status quo. Every project we do, we're generally going to run into some of them until we get our arms around, am I doing project management as an unofficial project manager, thinking about value of the people in the process?
Very well said. And I think I want to throw this question in for you. It's only been in the last really 6, maybe 8 months that our world has been changed dramatically so by artificial intelligence, including artificial intelligence is being used in every piece of software imaginable that you can think of, from Asana to this to that to whatever, which in itself is project management. I've actually seen it integrated. In your humble opinion, as you move forward and see these tools being used, how, one, will the AI help? And two, how do we need to prepare ourselves for that as project managers?
I'm doing a lot of work right now on this integration of AI and people skills, the human capital side of it, because everybody seems to have a little fear that AI is going, and we know, there's some reality where AI is replacing tasks and stuff like that. The best advice I got, and I recommend for others, is to not fear AI, but to embrace it.
Yeah.
And it is, once you start using, everybody can go up to, I'll name one, GPT chat 4, or, there's Claude. There's a lot of different ones. I forgot the one on Microsoft. I just want to be equitable. I'm not
Copilot.
Thank you. Yeah, Copilot.
Gemini.
And there you go. It's really fun, actually, because what AI will do is relieve you of some of the burden of the tasks that you are doing as a project manager. So even brainstorming a list of tasks based on a deliverable that you have, or how it schedules. And again, I don't want to get specific. I'm not an expert in AI, but it's amazing when we get over our fear of AI, how we can partner with it to make it another member of the team. So
true. And it really comes down to, Kory, I've been using it a lot. And if you can become a good prompt writer, right, meaning it won't work well for you unless you feed it good information. Then it works very well for you. You can't be in a hurry with it either. I think people, oh, boom, I want to do this, I want to do that. I think you need to think through and then really be prepared for that prompt. How are you going to write the prompt? And it will spit out some amazing factual information once you do that, So you, in the book, you emphasize the importance of, you talked about scope creep, but scoping the project accurately. And I think for every project manager, it at some point becomes about scope creep. Did we bid this right? We have this included. The client's asking for more. Is the salesperson there to say, hey, this is going to cost more? Could you share some tips on how to define project scope clearly and why it's critical for project success? Because scope creep can take up a lot of time.
It's like my favorite set of words, only because it's a provocative, 2 words, and it really can create such pain. And understanding also that sometimes people are not in situations where they can control everything. So those listeners that are thinking, well, my boss tells me and I have to add it. I get it. I know that. I know that feeling. Even right before our time together was dealing with a senior stakeholder that we were negotiating, a little bit on things. But there's a lot in our control that we can do something about. So just want to separate that out for a moment so you don't get distracted out there with things you can't control. So first of all, the scoping part of project management cannot be missed. So even when we do a workshop on this, we I know we spend more time in the scope section than we do in a lot of the other sections. Because if you don't set the foundation right, it sort of messes with every other part of it. So you have to identify, first of all, and again, it sounds like it takes a lot of time. It doesn't. We like to say fast is slow, slow is fast. Very famous Stephen Covey statement that the better you do front loading and the more time you put there, the less pain you'll have down the road, the more success you will have versus going fast and then paying the price later on. So you want to identify all of your stakeholders. And I know it sounds crazy because people will say, well, Kory, you keep pushing. And you mean my family too? I'm like, yes, get out everybody that could possibly be touched by this project in order to not get blindsided in a few weeks by somebody who knocks on your door, sends you a text and says, hey, wait, you forgot about me. We all know that feeling, and it's, the project is slowed down. From there, it'll also help you identify the key stakeholder group. There's a couple of groups that get left out we call it the key stakeholder dance, who makes the decisions, who has the authority, who has the needs, so DAN, and CE, connections and energy. They're not signers. The people with connections are my people out in the field that have a lot of influence, that are going to, help with those that have a lot of negative energy or whatever. So I've got to identify, and we don't think about those people. So I want to make sure I've got the right people at the table as key stakeholders. And I want to make sure that I'm doing a really good interview. So we have templates, and it's in the book, but whatever you have, this is not a training session or a talk on how to fill out forms, but you should have a consistent method of what information do I need? And am I asking really good questions, thought-provoking questions? And do I know what answers I'm looking for? Which is a really big thing to think about. For a leader to say, or somebody to say, well, this is really important, that's why we're doing it, is not good enough. You need to get into, well, what does important really mean to you? Well, it's going to affect how we, set up marketing funds for next year. Okay, now I have more of an answer. So we need very clear, very specific information as answers. And the last thing I'll say, in that interview, my favorite line, to go back to scope creep, is the question, what will be excluded? What are we not doing in this project? Because it puts guardrails on at least part of the way to know, what? We're targeting these customers, but not those in this case. So those are a few tips for how do I do this? How do I scope stakeholders, key stakeholders, have a good set of questions, know what answers do you want, and make sure you're covering what are we not doing as a question so we squeeze out assumptions.
Well, and I want to encourage the listeners. So if you go to franklincovey.com, there is a /Speakers Bureau, and then Kory, KORY-KOGON. You can go there. Then there's a tab that has resources, and there's a resource center. It's also about the books. And much of what you're talked about, the book is up there, so they can learn more about the book. You can learn more about the workshops as well. So I want to encourage all of you, because as we speak about this, oftentimes you want more information. How do you find out more? So to find out more, just go to that. We'll put a link in the blog so that you can get to that. Now, you identified that the interviewing key stakeholders as really a very critical early step. And I would agree. You have to identify who they are, right? What their role is. What strategies would you recommend for engaging stakeholders who are resistant or are indifferent about actually, being part of the project?
So so as a VP myself and in executive leadership for many years, I can see it from both sides, because I might be one of those people that somebody is trying to get my attention and I'm really busy. So if somebody is running after me saying, "Hey, Kory, we're doing a project. We need some of your time." That's good. I'm not going to really, and don't judge me on this. I'm just being really honest. I'm, you know what? In the 50 requests that I get a day, that one isn't going to catch my eye. I might let that drop to the bottom of the inbox, right? But when somebody comes to me and says, "Kory, we are working on a project that is an event-based project that we're shooting for 20% higher involvement than last year in order to help generate 30% more leads for our sales effort. Do you mind answering a few questions?" Now you have my attention, because you piece the thing together in a very concrete, tangible way. So I know what my role is, and that stuff is really important to me. So I'm going to give you my time. So I'm telling you, Greg, that is the major difference, both of those that you said, resistant, and
indifferent. Right.
Indifferent. You got to find what floats their boat, or maybe you don't. Maybe it's the wrong key stakeholder, right? So why would they be a key stakeholder on this? And once you answer that question for yourself, then connect the dots for them as to why it would be worth their time to talk to you. You may not get 100% of people based on what I just said, but you will raise the percentages dramatically.
Well, I think when you're speaking to someone like yourself, you have to communicate the challenge. In other words, for people like you to get your attention, especially if it's somebody who's working on a project, and they parsed it out the way you said it, the communication, it became abundantly clear that that was more of a challenge for you. That was something that you could spend your time wisely doing. And I believe when we do give people in upper positions a challenge, they rise to the order because they're curious and they want to have their input put in. And that brings me to you talking about, let's just talk about this way, our teams. So how can the unofficial project manager best engage their team, especially when the team members, and here's the big part, may have some competing priorities or varying levels of commitment, which this is always the case, because it doesn't matter what company, most people are wearing many hats, all right? And those hats, because of other people in there, they're trying to spin the plates and keep them all going, right? So what do you do to kind of get alignment and get people on the team engaged?
Now, keep in mind this whole time as we're talking about project management, in my mind, we're not ever talking about one project. Most people out there don't have just one project, at least in the larger, small organizations, large organizations. If you're a solo entrepreneur, you are juggling a few things. So I don't want to say it's never one project. We have a lot going on. So it could be 6, 7, 8 projects that are going on at the same time that these people are engaged in and are being pulled in a million directions. The other thing, Greg, that you said, and so they have a lot of priorities, but the other thing that gets thrown into the recipe is that a lot of your listeners may not have chosen to lead people. They wanted to do a project and at the end of the day end up having to lead people. And that is, that wasn't the expectation. And so to add to it, I need to lead people in today's world in a way that inspires them to want to show up to play and win, versus you saying, okay, here, just do it. I mean, that's a really big part of of this is that people who never wanted to lead people are leading people. And it's why we really distill down to just a few behaviors that if leaders or project managers did really well, they have a really great chance of inspiring the people on their team to really want to do the work. And the other thing that's sort of the companion to that is that in many cases, these people don't functionally report to the project manager. And so now I never wanted to be a leader. They don't even directly report to me, but I need to inspire them. How do I do it? And it's, and so that's sort of the cocktail of it all. And it takes these 5 behaviors that if we just get those done really well, we have a good chance of inspiring our people. Would you like to hear them?
Well, yeah, and you have to keep them inspired, most definitely, but you have to keep them engaged. And yes, I do want to hear them.
Yeah. So, I mean, because I said a lot in there because this idea of, I just want to bring this home. And we always say, and then Stephen said this years ago, well before its time, and it became so apparent, particularly after the pandemic, is that in today's world, people on teams, we need to lead them in a way that they're willing to volunteer their best efforts. Volunteer their best efforts. We can't, because they're knowledge workers. So it's not like we can, count widgets. It's what people want to give of themselves. So that's what I mean by engagement and inspiration. And so the 5 behaviors are as follows. Number 1, we need to, and again, it's going to sound like what your parents taught you, but it's what you need to do these under pressure. I need to demonstrate respect to the team. I need to listen first. I need to clarify expectations for the team. I don't mean on the project. I mean even how their work is not just a bunch of tasks, but how their work is a contribution to the project, and they can see a line of sight to, why this project even exists. I need to extend trust to them. I can't do it all myself. I need to delegate to them and trust them. And finally, I need to practice accountability. I need to, first of all, model accountability, and I need to hold the team accountability. Because Greg, if you show up 3 days in a row to our meeting late, then, Sandy's going to go, well, Greg, nothing happens to Greg. So, I'm going to, take the kids to school today, because what the heck. So those are the 5 behaviors.
Well, I'm glad you outlined the behaviors because 2 that stood out for me, and not just because they were the last 2, but trust and accountability. I think on the trust one, a lot of times people who are heads or running the project, they have a challenge with this trust factor, meaning, if I want to get it done right, I got to do it myself attitude, right? And it's not the way it should be. It should be, if I want to get it done, I have to inspire the team and I have to trust. And even if they do make a mistake, I have to let them make that mistake, right? And we have ways or options to correct it. And then I think the accountability is, it's really just looking at everybody's ability to be accountable, right? Mm-hmm. And those are really important when you are meeting timelines, deadlines, projects, things you've got to do, report to customers, and so on. What are some of the best practices for choosing a project, and why is it important to have a formal plan? Or for what is it closing? Sorry.
Closing, yeah.
Closing. Closing a project to me, I mean, I've closed a lot of projects, but then they come back up and bite me in the butt because I thought they were closed and they weren't really closed. Because the client comes back and says, oh, yeah, you forgot to do this or you forgot to do that. And those to me are scope creep because it wasn't managed during the project. So speak with us about that, closing the project.
Well, you answered your own question because, it goes back to the scoping up front and making sure everybody's on the same page. And, I know we'll talk a little bit about this. One of the elements is track and adapt. So as we go through just these check-ins along the way, that's the value part, to make sure that, and the whole agile thing is instead of waiting until the end where they call you and say, hey, Greg, excuse me, you forgot a few things. not that that would happen, but it was your example, that we are in our planning really just making sure that we have connection points, checking in, making sure we're on target, all of that. When you get to the closing, a lot of times, well, you get to the closing, everybody's like ready to go on to the other 6 projects that they're working on. And even I'm like, oh, closing meeting, I will roll my eyes a little bit. But for the client and you, it is really important for the reasons that you just gave. Let's make sure that we're ticked and tied as of today, sort of like a balance sheet check-in. We're done. And then it sort of gives you a line in the sand when they come back to you and say, and this is important, particularly if you're a really small business, because you don't want this money going out of your pocket. You set that line where, yep, we got it. So when they call you back and say, well, wait a minute, I want this. Now you're talking about sort of a new project or an add-on. So really important just not to let it just fade away. But, you want to make sure that we have a closing meeting, make sure everything is done as planned. Internally, it's really, I say roll my eyes, the internal one. It is really important for the team to be able to, first of all, celebrate the good work they did. So remember what I said about inspiration and engagement. Obviously, you're going to hold people accountable in both ways. When they don't, it's going to happen. They didn't meet their commitments, and we have all kinds of tips and tools for how you have those kinds of conversations. At the end of the project, when it's complete, even if it wasn't perfect, you want to celebrate the things that went well, and then move into what did we learn? And the Agile world calls it a retrospective. So it's a very key part of it to say, what did we learn? What can we do better next time? And archiving all of those things. So when we do this type of project again, we're not starting from scratch. I said to you before, I roll my eyes a little bit like, oh God, we have that closing meeting, it's going to take time. And you can tell I'm very operational and very black and white. But we do the meetings, at the end of it, it's like us saying, oh, I'm so glad we went to dinner with Mary and Tom, even though we didn't want to go. We had such a great time. Same thing with this, having a closing meeting, the team is so engaged, and you get a real peek into how inspired they are for the next project. So really important to hold a closing meeting.
I'm glad you mentioned Agile, because that word gets thrown around so much in today's world. And you did talk about tracking and adapting throughout a project. What I'd like to know is if you could give a situation or a pivotal case where things didn't go well, and ones where they went exactly as planned, and you felt like the project was a success. In a lot of cases, people will finish a project, or they think they're finished, and it wasn't a success. Many things went wrong along the way. And you have had so much time to look at so many projects as somebody who does what you do. I figured you'd have 2 great examples.
So an example, of a big pivot, and this goes back to the project manager and how they handle the emotions of it as well as the functionality of it. But we have a case study of an organization. So think, the pandemic and all of that. We're a couple of years out of it, right? And so a lot of organizations are doing live, meetings for their kickoffs and, all of that. So this organization, which is an IT, not a startup, but has been around for a while, and they were going to have their first live in-person meeting outside the United States. So you can get a sense for the scope of putting that together, figure about 1,000 employees, something like that. And so they went to work on it, and couple of weeks before, it's, what goes into the hotels and the food and the activities and all of that. And about 2 weeks before the event, the company purchased, there was a merger, and the merger had to happen right at the time of the event. And so many of the people that would be in the event would have to work. And so they had to shift the whole project and to another time. And so I give you that example because just like your reaction, the reaction by everybody was crazy. Everybody was out of their minds, and the fear around what about the hotel and the fees and, all of this. And the project manager almost lost her cool with the team when she had to tell. She lost her cool with her boss, which was okay, right? They were in the privacy of his office, and she was able to let off that steam. And then she got in front of the whole project team, which is a huge group, and you could sense that she almost let it go too far emotionally, because you can't be overly optimistic, like, hey, this is great, everything's gonna work out.
Right.
But she also couldn't, like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that ever happened. The leader really has to lead out under these kinds of circumstances. So, and they ended up having a great event. They managed to mitigate, the CFO was involved. They mitigated, some of the additional costs. They, wrote off some of the costs back to the merger, and everybody lived happily ever after. So
that's a really good example. It really is, of someone pivoting, right? And she had to pivot. Now, can you share an example where you had a project plan, and it went just exceptionally well? It was like a A+++ case. And in so doing, what was it that you think made it such a success? Meaning, what were the alignment of the stars that created this project to just go, like, it was under budget, it completed early, the client was happy, everything went well?
Those are very few and far between.
Well, I was trying to pick back in the brain to see if I could see if there was one back there.
I can use, it's probably unfair, but I think that I'm going to use this. But because every project has its ups and downs and ins and outs. So it's hard to say, well, which one was perfect. I will tell you the project, and that's why this is not fair. The project that went really well was rewriting this book.
Okay, there you go.
And I say it's unfair because I have a small team that I work well with. The key stakeholders were completely bought in to what we were doing. And so, sometimes you do have a couple of people. I'm always careful with saying go-to people, because then they end up getting the burden of everything. So that's another leadership moment conversation. But I have a few go-to people that we just work really, really well together and inspire each other. And so it started on time, it went flawlessly, ended on time, and, the publisher was thrilled.
Well, and they're aligned, This is a Ben Bella book, and I don't know if it was Matt Holt or not, but if it was, then Ben Bella is being run now by Matt Holt. It's a wonderful book, and it's very well laid out, and you guys did a great job. So what tools or resources do you find indispensable for project management? Now, we said we weren't going to endorse anything, but we realized Gantt charts and all these various tools that are out there, especially for those who are not formally trained in the field. We've got AI now that's actually doing, creating your schedule for you.
Yeah.
I see it happening. And I think, I haven't used that software yet. And I think all those who are listening understand which one I'm talking about. But what are some of the tools or resources you find indispensable that you speak about in the book?
And I know, because I'll say this, besides the people, because they're the most indispensable. You can't do this without people. So that's number one. You mentioned the Gantt chart. So I want to go there for a moment, because really project management revolves around the principles of a Gantt chart. So I know your listeners are shuddering already that I said that word. Here's what I would say. There's a few things. What happens is organizations will say, here, use this project management software. So I'll name a couple: Microsoft Project or Smart Sheets on the Google side. There's Monday.com. Asana. There's a few, out there that people work with. And a lot of people, it's funny, when I poll people on what they use, and this is for years now, to this day, the number one answer, do you want to guess what the number one answer they give me on what they use?
Excel.
Exactly. Excel, number one response, because people know how to make columns, they do some formulas and stuff like that. And Microsoft Project, to name one, just like Google is with Google Sheet, is all it is Excel with some other project management principles embedded in them. For instance, dependencies. So, let me go back. What I was saying was that what happens in organizations, they might give out and say, here, use project. It's going to make you, very productive. And you open it up and you go, not for me. You close it, never to be seen again, because you don't really understand it. And what you don't understand beyond what looks like Excel is things like dependencies, this idea of ordering the tasks of the project, but then being crystal clear about, wait a minute, I can't do this task before that task, and hooking them together in the software. And you'll understand that in a moment. So when we're hooking these things together, the software, even before AI, is doing the work in the background that's going to help you make your on-timeness based on the way you're scheduling. The second one, and this is demystifying the Gantt chart in 3 minutes, the second thing that I can't live without is duration versus work hours. And again, these are time management principles, even if you never open a Gantt chart, because a lot of times what happens, the boss says, Kory, can you pull together that customer list? How fast can you do that? I'm like, oh, wait, I just need a few hours. I need 3 hours. Well, really? But I need Greg to help me, and I need Mary, and Greg's out doing his podcast today, and Mary's on PTO. And so in those 3 hours, I can't get done for 3 days. So the duration that I'm building into the schedule is not 3 hours, it's 3 days. All of those things, dependencies, duration, all get cooked together and calculated together to come out with the critical path, which is the most amazing part of the Gantt chart, because it shows you all of the things that have to be done exactly on time in order to hit your deadline. And it just turned the Gantt chart into a strategic management tool for you. So regardless of what tool it's named, be open-minded to try a Gantt chart, because you can do it with a very simple project.
That is brilliantly said. Now, to throw something in there, when we start something, we have to innovate it. We've got to create it. We're working with something. What are your thoughts around, and I've seen this, and there's a company and a gentleman who's been on my podcast, Chris Griffiths, Open Genius. The software is AOA, and I'm not doing this for a plug. I'm doing it because mind mapping can actually turn into a Gantt chart on his software. So in other words, if you were to mind map something, and then you take the mind map and it actually creates the foundation for the Gantt chart, and then you put in the timelines, it seems like mind mapping to Gantt charting is really a good solution. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think that's amazing. You'll have to send me the name. I'd like to look that up, because we do say that brainstorming is an enormous tool in project management. You'll see some mind maps, in the book as well, because it's sort of, even when you go back to the stakeholders, you want to mind map, you want to brainstorm all of the stakeholders and the key stakeholders, and then you want to brainstorm all of the deliverables and the components that break down under it. You want to, brainstorm all of the tasks. So I love that, because that is such a key component. And then, of course, not everything that you this is where the human side of AI comes into play, because not everything you brainstormed should be included, right? It was just a brainstorm. So I'm sure there's a mechanism there where it goes from the mind map into the schedule, into the Gantt chart, and you're obviously doing some editing to either take out what you don't want, or you're highlighting what you do want. Yeah. I think it sounds pretty cool.
I'm going to introduce you to Chris. He's the CEO and founder of Open Genius, and you guys can take it from there. But my point is, yes, it has AI in it. Yes, it does this wonderful thing. But what I'm trying to get at for people is, when a project starts, all the stakeholders who want to be included in it when you're developing this, mind mapping is a great way to pull in all of those ideas and then call them out, kind of go through this iterative process to say, okay, which is important to this project, and then work from there. So managing long-term projects can be challenging. It's always challenging. Doesn't matter if it's 1 month, 1 year, or 5 years. What advice can you offer to maintain momentum and keep teams motivated throughout the duration of a project? Because, I know that I've managed projects that are long, and sometimes I wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, I've got to go back and work on that project again today. Is that one not done yet? I'm not as motivated anymore. And I know many people, when they get long duration projects, I know we're supposed to see the vision at the end, but sometimes it gets a little hazy.
No doubt. And myself too, I work on year-long, projects. It's not as I want to speed them up. Again, you can only go as fast as some of the humans, and everything that goes with it. I will say that the first thing, and this is a big topic for me, I do think that more should be said around keeping people engaged through the length of a project. Because we're going to start with, well, you got to use 5 behaviors, So if you demonstrate respect and you listen first and you do, all of that, they'll be inspired all the way through. So if you are not leading that way, you're in for a long haul, and you're going to have, remember what I said, slow is fast. If you are not leading them in a way that inspires them to want to volunteer the best efforts, 6 months down the road, you're going to have a hard time finding them, let alone, inspiring them. And so that's a baseline. You have to be creative, because a few things happen towards the end of a project. First of all, people are tired of it, like Greg was talking about, but also some of the more involved stakeholders I'm going down a psychological road here, start to get very tense because we're coming to the end of the project. We're like in the second half of it, and they get tense. And that is the worst place for scope creep to occur. That's the trap. Because what happens, which I've seen on every single project that I've worked on, that's even a dinner, what happens? It's like, well, wait a minute. Did I remember the carrots? Are we going to have enough food? Maybe we should make some more potatoes, because we knew we had it all measured out, right? And then we start to reach the end and everybody starts to get a little crazed. Like, oh my God, what if we got it wrong? And so as a leader, you need to be aware of those things. I have to keep them inspired, leading them the best way I can at various, and having these breaks of milestone check-ins and just stopping and sort of cutting up the project into smaller chunks gives you a new beginning and end. So you have what we call the primacy recency effect, where it's almost like, okay, well, we finished that, let's start again on this other one. So instead of it just being one long thing, we have these breaks where it's like, okay, that's done, let's start over. And now that's just the human psyche and how we think in chunks rather than long things. And remember what I said, you're going to have to work at keeping people calm and not giving into, you want to listen to people's feedback, but calming people down as you get towards the end of the project, and fear sets in. Did we get that right? And it's just a human response.
I think also in the human response is most people that work on these projects, they're curious. So they're looking for something different, right? And when you come every day to the same old thing, and you don't see anything new, anything exciting, anything different, it's like, okay, I'm trying to plod this forward to completion, to getting it closed. You get a bit depressed. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. So in wrapping this interview up, I have 2 things. One, everybody go out and get project management for the Unofficial Project Manager. 2, I'm going to recite the website again. It's franklincovey.com/speakers-bureau/Kory, KORY-KOGON. And there you can learn more about that. And I would like to invite you as well, Kory, because I think the predecessor book, The 5 Choices, The Path to Extraordinary Productivity, I know we're having David Allen on here in the next couple of weeks.
That's cool.
And David and I have been good friends, and he's got a new book called Teams. And the thing I want to do is offer that up to you. And two, any closing words for project managers who are listening right now, who you think you could provide a resource with, or a tip or an idea or something you could do that they could immediately apply to the project they're working on today, because they just listened to this podcast and they're like, okay, these guys talked about a lot of stuff, but I'm right in the middle of this project. What can Kory tell me to actually keep me going?
Well, I mean, two things. One is a little bit of motivational, one's a little more tactical. So, since you opened up with this, but since the pandemic, the level of innovation skyrocketed because we needed new everything, new systems and new ways of working and all of that kind of stuff. So project management is really the in skill set for knowledge workers. So the predictions of how many project managers will be out there in a few years is, really, really amazing. And again, remember, with AI, somebody needs to lead the projects no matter what. So that human side of that. So you're in a really good place that if you are working on projects, continue, because it's the place to be. If you are currently on a project and you are saying, like Greg said, okay, well, out of everything I heard today, where do I start? I would go back to looking, and again, you might be way down the road on it, but it doesn't matter. I would go back and look at your scope and say, did I ask the right questions? Do I have all the information, to what I need? And do I have a really good foundation here? Or did I leave something out, or did I leave somebody out that I can catch up with now? That's what I would leave you with.
I think that part about something out or someone out is really a good tip. In other words, continually ask yourself questions internally as you forward the project to progression and closure about who is it that I need? What's the resource I need? Where can I get that? When do I insert it into this project? Because as projects move forward, you haven't identified all the resources. You have to find resources that can actually add to the value of that project as you move along. And that's either people or other resources or money or software or whatever it might be. But it always seems to happen. And Kory, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'd like to have you back on again for your other book. And thank you for being on Inside Personal Growth and sharing your wisdom and expertise. And again, there's the book, Project Management for the Unofficial Project Manager, updated and revised edition. Go out and get yourself a copy. We'll have a link on Amazon. Namaste to you. Thank you so much for being on. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Greg. You too. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening to this podcast on Inside Personal Growth. We appreciate your support. And for more information about new podcasts, please go to InsidePersonalGrowth.com or any of your favorite channels to listen to our podcast. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.